Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 5 of the God Mode podcast. A big week. Naval's tweet went viral. He said coding an app is the new starting a podcast. And we are three dudes. We just started a podcast, episode 5 now, and we're coding apps all day, every day. So I think this is very relevant for us. Let's dive straight in. To get started, Naval posted coding an app is the new starting a podcast. Back in the days, having a podcast was something unique. And then suddenly podcasting became democratized and all the podcasters said, hey, maybe we should make podcast equipment a bit more expensive before everyone starts a podcast. But now coding an app is actually super accessible to anyone. And yeah, like we've been doing for the past year, basically, is coding all day, every day, even though we're not coders. So Naval said it quite well. Ben, what have you been working on this week? Because your clip where you spent a lot of tokens went quite viral. And a lot of people are saying that you're very inefficient with your token use, but I don't think you're inefficient. Can you respond there?
Yeah, well, when you're trying to move fast, I think it's okay to be maybe not super efficient and making sure that, your token usage is perfect. I guess what I'll say is that like I'm running multiple businesses, right? 3, and then I'm launching a 4th one. We're also using that same API token for this podcast, right? So for all of the kind of Nick's work that he's doing and all like that's going through the same kind of API, but basically I have like multiple things that I'm working on at any given time when I'm at my desk, right? So I'll have multiple instances of my terminal up. I'm working on my interview product, my sales product. I'm also working on Viralytics, this UGC analytics app. So like all of these things are running in tandem, right? And when you're doing that, like I do think that the token usage can probably, add up. On top of that, like I really don't spend that much time trying to like clear my context windows and doing all these things that might improve the usage of the tokens, because like again, like I want to make sure that these AIs have all of the relevant information so that they can make the right decisions in the moment, right? So I don't know, that's what I'm working on this week. I've just been kind of making improvements. Claude has, or Anthropic has, double the usage for the next 2 weeks, right? So I think since folks in the States are on holiday, spring break and all, they have certain hours where you can double your usage, and I've been fully taking advantage of that. I looked at my like Claude usage, and I think I'm at like 40 to 50% through the week, but I've used it like heavily for the last 3 or 4 days. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, it's nice that you bring this up of the Claude usage times 2, that they got generous in the off-peak hours. And I think the message there was that they wanted to say thank you to everyone downloading Claude, because Claude became the #1 app in the App Store recently, after actually they got refused by the Pentagon. So now suddenly everyone is vibe coding or using Claude. Yeah, it's actually awesome that they double the usage. I've been maxing out every moment of the day. I'm very close to upgrading to the $200 plan. It's just I need it now, and I think Claude is going to become the new interface that everyone actually is going to work on. Like in 10 months from now, 90% of the people will be working just within Claude desktop. That's my predictions are for later, but that's my prediction for now already. Luca, where in the world are you?
Lima, Malta right now, yes, still. Obviously, my app that I've been working on for the last month, really since it launched, is very focused on the Maltese law system, and we digitized the judicial sales in Malta. I mean, that app has done really well for its first month and is being used by, I've had over 1,000 people sign up, 50 active subscribers. And it filled up a gap in the legal courts that is solved thanks to the idea, but also myself going in and vibe coding it. But essentially, I've translated all of the courts documents into English and displayed them publicly for people to be able to browse and see. And then through building a SaaS, we're representing people actually in court through power of attorney. So it's really interesting to continue to explore different fields with professionals. I've been spending some time with architects over the past week or two to see what software solutions are missing in the local market here, and comparing to other markets, seeing what softwares already in, let's say, the US market and in the UK market, and adapting them for the local market. In the past, that would have taken an entire team to do. Today, one person can build that entire end-to-end flow and have quite a decent revenue stream. I think I'm going to continue to test a lot of different ideas and to see which ones stick most before I double down on something else next.
And are you still using Replit for that, or are you also Claude built now?
I am. I'm still such a fan of Replit. It's using Claude at the end of the day and behind it. So I know that Replit has positioned itself to be for the builders, and that means that it is a bit more expensive than other options like Lovable. But I think the performance of it is on par with using Claude when it comes to the coding. Where it saves me a lot of trouble is I don't need to take care of logins. I fully use Replit's login system. I find that super useful because I don't need to integrate multiple login providers, and my mind is at rest that my customer data is secure. Since my background is not technical, I wanted to offload the most sensitive parts of building an app to Replit, and it's been working very well for me so far. The average user that I'm targeting has never heard of Replit before, so when they see login by Replit, they don't assume it's vibe coded, you know.
Next up is a clip from Travis Kalanick. He was guest in the All In podcast. I highly recommend going check that out. He's a great thinker. I want to play this clip quickly where he says something like, if you're doing something which is easy, it's probably not valuable. We're just going to play the clip here.
I had it so much harder uphill both ways to school, whatever. Yeah. You know, I don't think like that. It's more about the excellence of the process.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, how do you raise money? And they're like, oh, yeah, just throw a deck to the guy. I'm like, okay, well, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
What is a thing is going all the way until it hurts. If you're doing something and it's easy, it's not valuable. And I'll explain. Like, let's just think of like a marathoner.
Yeah.
World-class marathoner. On mile 21, is that dude smiling? No, he's not smiling. By the way, if he is smiling, you know what's about to happen? He's about to get his ass whooped. Okay?
It's over.
Because why? Because somebody else who's down for the pain will go harder and further and pass him. Yeah. And so if you're getting money easy, I'm like, why didn't you go harder? You could have done it better and more. Mm-hmm. Now, you don't do things hard just because. Maybe he's like, it just doesn't matter, dude. Like, I got to go do something else that's hard. Mm-hmm. But the key is, like, if money matters, which I think we would say it does, especially in certain categories, totally. You need to be the best in the world at it. Yeah. And it's not enough to say it was easy. If anybody comes to me and says a strategic thing was easy, I'm like, you messed up. Mm-hmm. You could have been way better.
So yeah, Ben, you sent us this interview and you said something in the lines of he's one of the greatest thinkers next to Elon. What do you think of this clip?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I think of Travis, I think he's like a super polarizing guy who has had his ups and his downs. Like, I can't get out of my head that one clip where he was in an Uber and he's like cursing out the Uber driver and really just had like a kind of a meltdown, crashed out in front of one of his own employees, if you will. But like the flip side to this is that this guy, it just grinds. Like, he has that similar, I would say, insecurity about him that probably drives Elon. And like, I mean, you know, he really, you know, I do agree that I think like, you know, making sacrifices and really pushing and, you know, feeling the pain. I also heard Mark Andreessen say this basically this week as well in an interview where he was just like, he's looked at kind of different founders. There have been the founders that really just keep grinding and feel the pain. And then that type 2 fun emerges afterwards where they're like, oh yeah, that was really tough and stressful and sacrificing. I sacrificed a lot, but you know, the outcome was amazing versus there are other founders he's seen who have just, you know, gotten burnt out, quit and moved to, you know, Sri Lanka and just started surfing. And like that was their life. And Mark Andreessen was kind of echoing this as well, that he thinks the most fruitful outcome, I guess, as a CEO is the people that who are just really grinding and seeing it through, even if it's like really difficult. So I don't know, that's point number one. But then point number two is just kind of why is Travis Kalanick now going on this press tour and talking to all these medias? Most of us probably don't know, but like the founder of Uber, Travis Kalanick, he just came out of 8 years of stealth mode, right? He said this thing that really is kind of the precipice of what his new company is all about. So he broke it down this way, right? How does a computer run? There are 3 different main components of a computer. The first is the CPU, which is the computation of the data. The second is the storage, which holds the data. And then the third is the network. That's what moves the data, the bits from point A to point B. So he's thinking bits are in this kind of software world that we're living in. But Travis Kalanick, the Uber guy, right? He's all about physical stuff. He lived in the physical world with Uber. And so, how does this convert in the physical world? Well, you have manufacturing, which is manipulating of atoms. You have real estate, which is where you store the atoms. And then you have transport, which moves atoms from point A to point B. What is his new company called? Atoms. And so it's the same architecture, right? It's matter instead of data. And essentially this whole stealth mode organization that he's been hiring, I think he said like maybe 5 to 1,000 people in LA are working for Atoms. They've been setting up LLCs across the world, and they really are trying to accomplish this grand task of how can we make the movement, the storage, and the manufacturing of atoms more efficient. So he's doing this by mining, setting up mining businesses across the world. He's doing this with his cloud kitchen infrastructure where he's creating ghost kitchens. And then I think there's also like a real estate play here as well. So super fascinating. And I just like love this concept of like this atoms analogy from the bits world to atoms.
Yeah, that one stuck with me too. That was such a good line.
Yeah.
And he's just a great yapper or talker as well. Like not yapping, like like he just knows what he's talking about, and he is thinking in a different dimension than anyone else.
He's
Like
a
Elon,
first
right?
principles. Sorry to cut you off. He's like a first principles thinker, right? It really does feel like when Travis Kalanick is thinking about this stuff, he's kind of a contrarian like Peter Thiel would be, right? He's not like necessarily just going along with like the crowd and what everyone else is saying. He's like really thinking about it from like a first principles lens, which is pretty awesome to see.
Mm-hmm. And I think this line that was mentioned, where if you're doing something that's easy, it's not valuable, that also definitely comes down to vibe coding these days and building with AI, where anyone can now build apps. And if it's easy and you can just one-shot prompt it, it's probably not going to be very valuable because anyone can do that. So you either like you very much need a moat, which usually is distribution. So if you don't have distribution, you build something that's not very valuable, it's not probably going to make you a lot of money unless you have the distribution. And yeah, it was a very insightful interview for sure. I think one other thing that was mentioned was using capital as a weapon. Do you remember that line from the interview, Ben? Where they compare, like, where I think Jason said like, oh yeah, Travis, and like you're one of the only ones or one of the first using capital as a weapon, and Sam Altman is doing the same right now, experimenting with capital as a weapon, and then like investing it all in and then using, I don't know the specific context, but that was another line that got stuck.
So like capital as a weapon, basically, like, do you remember back in the day with Uber, right? You would use the app because you had all of this, like all these credits, basically like you'd have 30% off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uber was kind of one of the first companies that were like, I remember we were like thanking the VCs, thanking the venture capital world for subsidizing my ability to get like a super cheap taxi from point A to point B. And like he kind of invented that, where he said, no, we're gonna capture the market by just offering a better product. How do we do that if the same employees are running the Uber business and the taxi business? Well, we subsidize it, right? And we pay the Uber employees just as much as they'd be paid if they were a taxi driver. But now that the consumer gets a better price. So similarly, I think with like, ChatGPT and Sam Altman, like I think all of us probably subscribed to ChatGPT or else did at one point, but a lot of people are getting subsidized access to ChatGPT because Sam is all about just like, how can we gain as much market share as humanly possible?
Yeah, and on that note, I think last week we mentioned about the global map of AI and how a $20 subscription might be cheap for one country but expensive for the other. I've actually heard that OpenAI for India has the $20 plan only costs $2. So they're part of using capital as a weapon maybe as well, subsidizing to get users. Anyway, that's a bit of a different story. Yeah, Luca, do you have anything to say here on going all the way until it hurts?
It's interesting what he's doing. Yeah, I was also listening to Mark Andreessen, and his perspective on this as well, and like just not to look back, not to dwell on things, just move forward. I really found that quite an interesting mindset, and I think it's true that the moment somebody does decide, oh, okay, I'm just going to relax and focus on keeping peace and everything is easy, it's probably the moment that you lose that edge in the market where you're trying to think outside the box, trying to do things that haven't been done before. So yeah, super cool.
In episode 2, we called out the Citrini research article where it was a kind of doom scenario of what AI would do to the world and how AI would change the world, and then how everyone will become broke and companies will die and the economy will be crushed. But now, 3 weeks later, we're seeing a lot of results already of that. And I call it a bit of the AI disruption, maybe the anthropic disruption. But yesterday or 2 days ago, Google announced, for example, Google Stitch, which is basically a visual designer where anyone can design something with just prompting. Then Anthropic has done a bunch of announcements which disrupted different industries. Here on the slide, if you're watching, you can see that the biggest drawdown in software stocks was $830 billion was wiped away in 6 days' time with just AI announcements. The biggest daily drawdown or wipeout was 285 billion on February 3rd. I feel like this is basically maybe the bottom of this the SaaS apocalypse that they call it. But there is a bunch of different industries being touched here. As you can see, Thomas Reuters minus 18%. I think this is legal. There's a bunch of other tools. Adobe, the CEO, resigned after 18 years because being disrupted by AI, what we assume. Salesforce down big time. IBM down thanks to a Claude announcement. Figma is down 79% from its IPO. Was down 8% on the news of Google announcing Google Stitch. So this is the AI disruption that just keeps on going, and every week there is a new story of these. I'm surprised what is next, but last week we also discussed the potential of where AI has the biggest potential to be adopted and to grow. Guys, what's your thoughts here? Is this just the beginning, or have we seen the biggest losses already?
Yeah, no, I think this is probably going to continue, right? But I mean, I think there's just going to be a dispersion, I think, between the companies that are basically just SaaSes. So the DocuSigns, the Atlassians, most of the companies on this slide, versus the other ones where, you know, Block and they still have product market fit. It's not necessarily just a SaaS product, right? There's more going on there. But companies like that, they can leverage AI to get really profitable. So I think we're going to kind of see a chasm between like two different types of companies here. The other thing I'll say is that the meta thing, it's in its own category, right? That wasn't AI disruption. That was just a fundamentally wrong bet on human behavior. You know, the virtual world, that required people to change how they wanted to interact with reality, whereas agents, they don't require that. They work within the world as it already is. So yeah, like the same week, I think Stripe launched an MPP, right, which is an agent kind of protocol for payments. And there were like tons of other releases that kind of, you know, I'd say propelled and excelled other companies that we're seeing. Like we're not necessarily seeing, I don't know, like Block is still performing well, and like there are tons of other companies out there that I think are you know, not going to necessarily be hit by this AI wave or the SaaS apocalypse like you said. But it is interesting. I think it's going to continue.
It's going to continue. Yes. I mean, I was just, when it was on this topic, I was thinking of something slightly different, really, and more from the lens that the more people use the AI technology in their day-to-day work, the more people are going to start adopting it. I mean, I was at a Lovable event on Women's Day, and there was a kid, and I sat down with this kid for 2 hours, and together with him, we vibe coded an entire video game, you know, and this is an 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid. So it's like I feel privileged to understand and have adopted this technology before the next wave of people. But I do feel like there's only a matter of time before everyone is using the tools. So then it's like, I guess, if everyone's more efficient, then more people there's going to be less or more need for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think on the Meta point as well, I've read that Meta also announced that they are laying off 16,000 people. That's 10%. I mean, that's again like following up on what Jack Dorsey did and what other companies have been doing, going AI first, laying off people, and probably investing more in AI. A second announcement that happened, we just mentioned Stitch, and we might go a bit deeper into that as well. But Claude announced Dispatch. Dispatch is a persistent Claude on your computer, message from your phone, zero setup, which is basically, I think, Claude's or Anthropic's OpenClaw, right? Where you can have your Claude now running and you can send instructions from your phone and it can actually build things. Have you tested Deep Dispatch yet?
I haven't tested it. I have a MacBook Pro, so I feel like for those people, it's less like significant of an update than like if you had a Mac Mini, right? But everyone's really trying to get in on this like whole Mac Mini wave where everyone's got these devices that are on all the time now. But yeah, I mean, to me, this is like, it's interesting. All of the LLM providers, they basically kind of work within their ecosystem of like the Claude app, the ChatGPT app, but none of them have kind of made the kind of UX decision of saying, oh yeah, we integrate with WhatsApp, we integrate with Telegram. Like you can now use Claude to send to your, Claude digital twin in Telegram, right? And then you can get that into Claude Code directly. And I do wonder whether that's coming or if they want to go that route or not. But yeah, Dispatch to me, like it seems like a cool way to kind of like jot down notes and like it really gets addictive if you start being able to build apps on the fly, right? If you're on the subway or just commuting and or like waking up and like walking to a breakfast spot and you're like, oh yeah, there's this great idea. Let me just send a voice note to my agent and have it create it, as opposed to like sitting at your desk, right? So I think they're realizing that, and it's a cool feature.
I mean, that's basically what I'm doing every morning when I'm in the gondola on my way to the slopes. I'm chatting with Nick, our producer, and I'm discussing whatever has to be in the slides. This was this morning and yesterday morning as well. And it does indeed get addictive because even the wasted time when usually you're just sitting, you can do shit now. So that's awesome.
Struggling when I go back to using my Siri. So I'm using the AI to talk to, and it understands and transcribes super well. And then you try use like your iPhone Siri, and it still gets the will type your WhatsApp message wrong before you send it. So that's been really frustrating.
Yeah, what were you guys saying in the chat? Apple should buy Whisperflow. I totally agree.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think I saw that on Twitter. Someone was like, Apple, please buy Whisperflow for the sake of all of us. Like, we need this. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Another prediction. I know we're not at the prediction part, but I really do. I'm starting to think Apple is going to like really start investing more in maybe buying up some of these AI companies, right? Because they haven't made any progress still. Here we are, it's 2026. I don't know. I feel like it's almost reckless for them not to like invest in a Whisperflow and maybe maybe even Anthropic or something, right? I don't think that would happen, but something big, I feel like on the investment side from Apple makes sense in the AI world.
To me, it feels like the operating systems of yesterday are gone, and the new operating systems are these open clause. I can't see a future that does not include that structure in the way we can use our devices. So for me, like the Mac OS, the Windows OS is how we used to interact with technology, and the open clause framework is how we will do it tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. And then locally, probably like whatever can be done locally is going to be the cheapest and it's going to make the most sense for the user after all, as well as for the business model. Back to Google Stitch. Google just announced Google Stitch and it has 5 specific upgrades: AI canvas, voice inputs, instant prototypes. And by this announcement alone, Figma was down 8% on the launch day of Stitch, of the new version. And in general, Figma is down 79% from their IPO. So the market already decided this one. And I think the market is super excited about this Stitch. I tried it out actually this morning and I only got to 404 pages. So I don't know if it's that on point yet or if I was doing something too complex. But honestly, this launch video looks really good. I sent it to some of my designer friends. I say, hey, is Figma dead? Have you tried this before? And they did say that they tried Stitch before. It wasn't that good yet, but now the video actually looks great. And it looks like you can do literally everything you can do in Figma, but then with prompts, which is exciting. Very exciting for the designers, but also maybe scary for designers because they might just lose their job to AI, or at least they got to adapt. Ben, what do you think? Would you use Stitch for UI?
Yeah, so I think we've talked before, Rick, you brought up this thing that really kind of supplanted in my brain about how everything is code, right? And I've talked about SVGs and how when you're using like Claude Code to design a website today, it's basically just using SVGs, vector graphics to basically create all these designs. But basically what Stitch is now doing is it's kind of combining what you can do with vibe coding, right? HTML, but it's doing that with Nano Banana Pro. And combining those two together just elevates your landing page design, where you're now basically at like what a professional designer would be able to do when putting together a landing page. The other thing that was interesting is everyone's kind of latching onto this concept of the design.md, right? That file that lets you, basically put into a markdown format what your design system looks like. And so, like OpenClaw, everyone talked about the soul.md, right? There was personality in OpenClaw and in this agent. And now this design.md is like basically laying the groundwork for how do you define a design system in the vibe coding world. So that's kind of what I think about it. I mean, they really leaned into like this whole voice aspect of it, how you're like really conversing with the AI to redesign this website. But I don't know. I think really it comes down to like Nano Banana and like the graphics going beyond just SVGs.
Yeah. And the name is good too, because before we've been stitching together different models, like you stitch together Nano Banana with Dan Hicksfield or with another UI builder or with Claude. So I just find the name pretty good.
Yeah. I wonder if that's, I mean, they did they have that intention in mind, or like what, I wonder what
I don't know, but Google
they
has
thought
so
about
many
that.
tools these days.
I know.
Like the Google AI Studio is huge. It's becoming literally the everything company, which we've also been saying over the past few weeks that Google is just taking over and anyone is going to get disrupted by Google. If you're building a not so if you're building an easy AI app, Google is probably going to get you out of business. And they have the powerful models, right? So they can literally stitch together all the models and all the things that they have into different products for different users, and they can serve designers, they can serve coders, they can serve advertisers, marketers, and they have all like it's basically like what we are trying to do, getting different use cases, putting it together to serve one person. Google is doing.
What was that file?
Next up, we have Stripe announcing the MPP protocol. It's basically a protocol for agents to pay each other. We've been seeing this a little bit before in the crypto space, especially. I think we discussed like this about the 402 or the X402 before, but now Stripe is entering the agent payment game. I've seen some comments under this tweet actually when they announced it, and they say, "Oh, the middleman is coming. They're gonna charge all agents 3% of all fees. They're gonna make money. They saw the capitalism in play." But I think that this is great if there's some agentic businesses and all of the like OpenClaws being able to pay each other, verified payment systems via Stripe. What do you guys think of this, of Stripe entering the agent game? Oh, and maybe also who's responsible when an agent spends money you didn't explicitly authorize?
I mean, yeah, the person, whoever it's attached to, still, I still think we live in a world where they're assuming responsibility. But there could be a lot of stuff where they're saying, "Hey, like this is your model that we were using, Stripe. Like, how could you let this have been done?" I don't know. I was thinking about kind of as you were talking, Rick. Like, what is the profit margin and fee structure going to look like in like a world where most transactions are happening with agents? 3% is like how much Stripe takes. And I've always wondered like kind of why is it 3%? Like, why is it that high? And it really comes down to like fraud rates, I think, to a great extent, right? Like that's kind of the natural amount, whatever that fraudulent percent of transactions are, they add a buffer on top. That's their profit margin, but they have to pay those out to the different, merchants, whether it's like Visa or MasterCard or Amex. But in a world where there's MPPs, agents, like, will the fraud rates go down? Will now we have 0.1% kind of, fees because like the fraud rates are lower? I don't know. I mean, I think I would hope that would be the case, but maybe you have agents that are trying to dupe other agents all the time. And like, will fraud ever not be an issue is kind of like the theoretical question I was wondering as you were kind of bringing that up, which should be interesting to see.
I think like with many of the cases, it's never going to be zero, but it doesn't have to be zero. It just needs to be less than the average human to be accepted. But what I'm curious about with this case is this enabling your agents to have their own wallet? Because just that in itself doesn't really tell me much. Or is it enabling your agents to purchase from websites that already exist? Does Stripe releasing this feature make it automatically possible for my agents to go to my local supermarket that has a web shop but doesn't have an API, you know? So that's what I'm curious about here, is if today I wanted to get my agents to do certain things, it might not be able to navigate or check out. So does this make it easier for existing stores, or do you need to install it in a store for an agent to use it?
Good question.
If
Yeah,
it's
here
the
it's
second one, then maybe there's a very interesting opportunity, which is to start creating shops for agents, right? Like, you know, basically you clone your local supermarket, but make it agent friendly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think you know, people are going to start building tools like even OpenClaw. There's the Claw Hub, right, where you can get all these skills. So browser base is, you know, one of the ones that's mentioned in this Stripe tweet. So you could have your agent be able to use browser base, this crawling API or whatever format it is, similar to how like last week we talked about, was it Cloudflare or yeah, Cloudflare having their like crawling feature, and that payment process back to Cloudflare happens through the MPP instead of like the traditional route of like, okay, we're gonna make like a credit card purchase, you're gonna buy credits. That's how I think this will work. It seems like how it's working, right?
Yeah, because like I mean, like technically, there's an opportunity for someone to create the Clomazon, you know, Amazon for
Yeah.
Amazon. Hey, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Get the domain. Continuing about the agents, one of the main models that has been used for OpenClaw was Minimax. So originally was Claude was one of the main models, and then people started figuring out open source models are more economical. I think Kimi K2.5 was the first one that actually got very adopted by the OpenClaw users. But then quickly Minimax came around the corner, and Minimax was pretty good at running OpenClaw as well. And it's I think 10 times cheaper than using Claude models. But now they announced a new Minimax M2.7, and M2.7 is trained by itself. So now models are training themselves to become better. This one, the tweet claimed 100 rounds of autonomous self-improvement, no humans in the loop, 30% performance gain on a single 830 GPU. In a previous episode, we discussed that that the Chinese open source models are 12 months behind because they've been distilling and all of this. Do you still think the 12-month behind narrative is applicable here? Because Minimax claims that it's close to Opus 4.6 already.
I think the thing that is important to just kind of conceptualize when thinking about USA and China is that in the US, like we are way more energy constrained than China is, right? So it's interesting because like, okay, yes, maybe China is 6 months, 9 months behind. Maybe their models are that much less powerful or smarter, but they also have, I think, like 10 times as much power as the US does, right? So if they're able to run these models, they could be running 2, 3, 4 times as many of these Minimax like GPUs. And then I guess the question is, do we think that throwing more compute at these models will make it better? And I think probably that is the case, right? If you ran Claude and you asked it to generate an answer 3 different times, and then you were able to pick the best one from it, you know, you would get a better answer. It would obviously not be super economical, but I think that's kind of like an interesting aspect of this whole like debate or, you know, both sides to, you know, US and China. But yeah, I mean, like benchmarks really, like, I think we're all a little bit just worn out of benchmarks. Like who knows if they actually work? I don't know. Everyone said Google Gemini 3.1 was incredible. And I still just don't hear it being placed in the narrative nearly as much as like ChatGPT ChatGPT or Claude. So, Minimax, it's like a way cheaper model, and that's awesome. I hope that the US models start getting cheaper, right? And becoming just as performative as the Chinese ones.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway here maybe as well is that these models, if they can be trained autonomously in a way, and they're open weights, consumer ready, that companies can now actually start training their own models. If they take inspiration from how Minimax here is trained, a company could take an open source model and start training it with their own data as well. If these things are possible now and running it on a single A30, which apparently costs $2 per hour to run versus H100 clusters cost 500 million plus. I think this might be the unlock for businesses that want to build or train their own models. But yeah, this me with my uninformed opinion on training models. I think I want to try training a model. Maybe we should do that. Train a God mode pod model with one of these single A30 GPUs. Ben, you should invest in a single A30 GPU. This is
Okay.
this is your job.
All right. Sounds good.
Hey, help us out.
So one other tweet went viral, and apparently one guy, he cured his dog's cancer with only $3,000 and ChatGPT. He designed a custom mRNA cancer vaccine to rescue his dog for $3,000.
Gave his dog 6 months to live, and he decided to open ChatGPT and figure out if he can cure the tumor himself. He did that by submitting his dog's DNA for sequencing. So he got the exact genome of his dog and extracted as data and supplied that to ChatGPT to start looking for recommendations on what kind of vaccine can be built to target this tumor. It managed to do that. Today, building you can do this sort of kind of hacking them together in a sense. Obviously, working with dogs, there's less of an ethics issue in some sense. And it did he did manage to save the dog's life, so reduced the tumor by 75%. And I do mention there's less of an ethics issue because, yeah, that's actually how drugs are tested, right? You test on animals first, and then you bring them into human trials. And I mean, it could be tempting, right? If one of your family members was diagnosed with terminal disease and they're going to die, you could be tempted to actually do something like this for them too. Just legally, you'll be maybe liable in some way. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, but if I was in that situation, I would probably give it a shot. So yeah, I think we're moving to a world where it's not just custom software that people are vibe coding for themselves, but it's also medicine. So yeah, vibe medicine is maybe the next prediction.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to inspire so many people to start seeking actual like treatment options, right? Through ChatGPT, which I don't know, like that may open up a can of worms in terms of another legal path that ChatGPT has to go down. They already have dealt with a bunch when it comes to like, using ChatGPT for therapy, but now it's actually therapeutic stuff, right? Where people might be starting to use this to build out mRNA vaccines, which I totally didn't even know you could do this, send this to ChatGPT and all. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, we discussed this last week as well of the opportunity of researchers in the cancer field specifically. I think using to come to new insights, new findings, and just much faster than it used to be. And I think in terms of I'm wondering if the doctor here had a wrong opinion and then this guy going to ChatGPT for a second opinion and then finding the solution, or if any doctor would have given this diagnose. Maybe
I think the
AI
thing
is
is,
actually great.
something like
Yeah.
cancer is quite diverse. We use it as an umbrella term, but cancer is so specific to each individual patient that no one vaccine or one treatment works for all cancers. And that's why this personalized medicine is so exciting, because it's literally created specifically to your genome. So last week, one thing we said is, who is liable if it goes wrong? But in this case, worst outcome was death. So how much worse could it have been?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
There's
then
been this line of thought lately where it's like, I'd rather put the risk on AI in certain things where today we wouldn't, because we're afraid of the risk that's on the person who's giving the recommendation. But, me as an individual, I wish I had the authority to make that decision for myself, right? It should, especially in a world where maybe this technology is going to take a few more years to actually be implemented through the mainstream medicine. Even in the space of the next 10 years, if somebody is sick and I can cure them with AI, it would be very hard for me not to break those rules, I would say, or try to.
Yeah, your ethics point is a great one because it feels like regulations are just not moving fast enough for the capabilities of AI, how fast they are moving versus how regulations are moving. And this conversation has been going for years now, right? Where governments and regulations are regulating AI as if it's chatbots, and they're most scared of fake characters and AI deepfakes. But I think these use cases are way more relevant. But there is some regulation needed. And then on
And then
the
let's
on the
be
medical.
fair, like I'm not telling people go out and start making your own vaccines in your kitchen. But if you work in the industry, I really hope that you are working with the latest models that are coming out of NVIDIA. They have their own one as well for protein folding and this sort of thing. Because even in this case, this guy didn't work alone. He actually did his own research, but then brought in experts to put it all together in the end. But, save the dogs.
Save the dogs. So next, we're going fast today, guys. So Andrei Karpathy scored every occupation in America on a scale of, I think, AI replacement risk, where each job is like he took, last week we discussed this research report from Anthropic, how different fields and different industries could adopt AI and are already adopting AI. Now, following on that, Karpathy did some extra research, created a new tool, and compared all of this. What came out of that is that the average score is a 5.3 out of 10, meaning that more than half of the jobs the jobs will be replaced or have replacement risk by AI. What do we think here? Medical transcriptionist is a 10 out of 10, will be replaced. Software engineers 8 to 9, financial analysts 7.5, nurses 4 to 5, plumbers are safe 1.5, and then the roofer is the safest job out there. You can try it yourself. It's fully open source. But guys, what do we think here? I love this research piece, and it's close to what Nick created for us as well. Yeah, and Karpathy is a great thinker. We've been following his work for a year as well. So Ben.
Yeah. Last week we showed that chart from Anthropic where they basically showed the potential of AI, of LLMs and where we are today. And like the biggest opportunity was in this, like, kind of, I would say, lawyers, well, not even lawyers as much as business and arts and all of the things where there wasn't as much risk if something were to go wrong. This kind of does validate that also to an extent. I would say medical transcriptionists is a little bit up in the air, where perhaps, like, if someone does transcribe something wrong in the medical world, there could be some consequences there, but it's super reliable right now, right? Transcribing as well. So any like rote task that an AI LLM can do, that's like at the top. And nurses are, I think, less or more protected, right? Which it shows here as well. But yeah, I don't know. I think humans tend to like latch on to like only the data that we can actually see today. And right now, LLMs are really good. I was listening to the Travis Kalanick podcast. He was on the All In pod this week, and he did kind of mention how vision hasn't really had its ChatGPT moment. And what does he mean by that? It means that like the models that are able to really identify any type of image and be able to react to it and make actions on it, they're not there the way that LLMs are, So that, I think, is also kind of indicative of it's definitely indicative of this, right? Where if you were to build a robot that would do a plumbing type job, the amount of nuance that's needed to like understand how to reach into like a three-dimensional space to grab something and be able to turn something like that, even just the AI component of that, of being able to identify where in space that is, like the models just are not there. So yeah, this kind of validates a lot of the things that other people are saying. Anthropic, that if I was graduating college, I would not want to kind of become just a full stack software engineer. I think you got to attack at it from another lens.
Replit raised 400 million at a 9 billion valuation, which is X valuation jump in 6 months time. Replit is your favorite vibe coding tool, Luca. They raised by investors like YC, A16Z, even Shaquille O'Neal. What do you think here? This is again exactly what we've been seeing in AI land, right? Extreme valuation jumps over a very short period of time. Companies growing faster than ever. I heard this in a podcast today as well, where from the Stripe guys, where they said that companies right now are growing 5x. New companies are growing 5x faster than new companies in 2018. So this is again incredible growth. Is the product growing as fast as the valuation?
Yeah, so if you're able to raise at that valuation at this point in time, which let's be honest is quite a sensitive time in the world, then I would assume that on the back end their business model is working out. I mean, from my side, as someone who has been building with Replit for a year, I am quite baked into their ecosystem now, and products that I have built that are generating revenue for me are going to remain on Replit. So I do see a future where other people like myself who have built successful apps on Replit are going to remain a part of that ecosystem.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just throw out a few other companies to give us perspective of like what Replit's valuation is, but Cursor's valuation, what do you guys think their latest round raise was at? What
11
valuation?
billion?
29 billion.
Whoa.
And that was back in December. And then another one is Lovable. What do we think Lovable's last valuation raise was? Yeah, 6. And that was a few months ago as well. So like Lovable, which has been only around for like, I don't know, 1 year, like pretty much. You know, a year ago, nobody knew who Lovable was. Pretty much right around now is when they first started getting, I think they're $100 million in revenue. Yeah. So anyway, like Replit's been around for a long time. They have done a really good job of like being able to adopt onto this whole vibe coding world and like adapt. I personally feel like it's harder for these companies to meld the product from something that wasn't a vibe coding platform initially to something that now is. I used to use Bubble, right, which was a no-code builder, and I think as far as I can tell, Bubble is really struggling because, you know, they were not a vibe coding platform, just like Replit. They were actually kind of in the same, I'd say, sphere, but Bubble was more user-friendly and fully no-code, whereas Replit was like, hey, we're going to make coding super easy for everyone. So I think they're still like chugging along, and there's definitely like a compelling use case to Luca's point, right, where he's like able to just use this trusted service that has the login functionality, has these different components, but it's definitely not like a Lovable. If I were to bet on Lovable versus Replit, I would definitely go the Lovable route here.
Really? I would take the other side. I would go the Replit route.
I think
Honestly.
Lovable are making a mistake because they're definitely not using the like Opus on the back end. They're using lower models, lower quality code, and they're positioning themselves as the MVP builder, whilst Replit is positioning themselves as the actual stack you build on. So I feel like Replit is going for more upmarket, kind of like quality, scalable apps. And Replit's background, was not in being a dedicated vibe coding platform, but its background actually, I think, helped it to leapfrog competition because they had infrastructure in place that was built to build scalable apps, to build, to build them in apps in a similar way as Bubble. But I think that allowed them to carry that kind of infrastructure stack into the vibe coding world, which was, I think, the reason why they were able to today, I think Cursor is on the way down in terms of users because the more advanced users that would be using Cursor are just using Claude Code directly in that sense. Whilst the people like myself who are building applications that they want to scale and not just build a quick MVP that they can they can show off. I feel like Replit is in that sweet spot. But yeah, we could see. Another thing to keep in mind about valuations is having a higher valuation is not always a good thing because that means that future rounds, if there will be, you would end up in a liquidity problem, or the next round you won't be able to reach expectations. So yeah, I think those factors are important to look into when seeing these deals as well.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with Luca here. I think like I would see Replit as a bit of the middle of the stack where you have Lovable for the real beginners. Anyone can create a easy website or easy app with Lovable. But you don't really want to like it's hard to build something scalable on there. And then Replit is for those people that want to build something more advanced but don't want to touch an IDE like Cursor. And seeing Replit announcing different parts of a user for different tools for users, like the motion design that they announced a few weeks ago. Plus, now they basically build an IDE in the browser, right? Where you can chat and everything happens in the browser, where the most advanced users will then go to either Cursor or Anti-Gravity and then use indeed Claude Code or different models in there to have the full spectrum of what they can do. So I think there's place for all of them, and they've been positioning themselves quite correctly, where, like you say, Lovable is not aiming to get those advanced coders. They're aiming to get the coaches and the small businesses to build their website in a prompt or to move over. We recently moved over our framer design to Lovable. It wasn't my decision, but like stuff like that. And my co-founder, he was like, yeah, it's much easier to use Lovable. I'm like, okay, sure, use Lovable, fine. But I think Replit positions itself well in the middle there. And I don't think we can really compare them. I think they're next to each other, where like Lovable Bolt are for real beginners. Replit is for anyone who wants to make it easy and doesn't really look at the cost. Because that's why I moved away from Replit, because it started to become costly to be ideating in Replit, building in Replit, hosting in Replit. While if I do that all with a bit more advanced tools like an anti-gravity or a cursor, I have that all in my own hands. I can use a free Vercel account. I can use a free Supabase account until you hit a certain spot. While if I wanted to do that on Replit, it would probably cost me quite a lot to get to an MVP stage. I'm actually wondering, Luca, what's your Replit bill like?
Yeah, I was about to check it as soon as you were mentioning cost, because like, yeah, it's I mean, for the results, it feels cheap, like, and this is with me with everything when people are talking about token pricing and stuff. If you're getting results out, it doesn't feel
Yeah.
expensive,
That's true.
But
you do pay per query or per request, right?
so $300 in how long is that? I just send them all my money and it's like, thank you. So, I'm not sure.
If you spend $300 in a month, you better get Claude Code, bro.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
seriously.
probably
That's the other thing
$300.
with Replit is you're locked in, I think, more so than these other things, right?
No, I mean, I could take it out, but so far, just hasn't felt worth moving out
Yeah.
for me. Yeah, about
Once-
$300 a month looks like it, because it's like,
$300 a month?
okay, so let's see. February, I have 59 plus 48, 59 plus 48 plus 59 plus 59 plus 59 plus 60.
That's 300.
Yeah, we're just over 300, like 350, yeah, in Replit credits. But I mean, we're not talking one app. Like I have one app that I actually shipped, and then I mean, I throw out a bunch of ideas every week and just see what sticks as well, right? So I have just the last 2 months, 5, 10, 15, 20 different things that I just, at least one-shotted.
I mean, in this way, that's a good business model for Replit, right? They're using the latest models, like for example, Google Gemini or Google Nano Banana for their motion design, and then Claude Code or Claude Opus for their coding, and they just make it more accessible into a nice UI that's easy to use, and they take quite some margin, it sounds like, on all those requests. So I guess that justifies the valuation as well as the valuation jump. If the user grow, their revenue will grow, and if there is multiple Lucas on that platform that spend $300 a month, then I think they got quite some margin per user, which
I buy the domains
is a
from
good
there now
business.
as well. Like I like convenience, guys. So for me, I could just have everything in one place, man. Like, send me the bill, okay? Like,
Yeah.
again, the things I've built are generating me income, so that's just my cost. And I would say what I'm trying to do this year is looking for the unsexy opportunities. So looking for those boring paper-based industries that need some, Gen Z millennial mindset to change them up, and then leveraging AI as much as I can to fill in all of the gaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Boring businesses is usually where the opportunities are. Like, yeah, what you're building right now sounds kind of boring to me.
I literally, yeah, we're dealing with paperwork, digitalizing paperwork, translating them from Maltese, visualizing them in a much more easy way. Yeah, super boring if you had to actually do that as a job.
Mhm.
I'm enjoying it because all I'm doing is visualizing it and creating a nice software as a service, and the people use it because there's a big opportunity when buying property sold at auction. But I mean, even plumbers, like I know, like we're saying that they're not going to be disrupted, but for me, at least in my market, this little market of Malta, there's no real software that makes it easy to book or to find plumbers. I'm not saying that's the best thing for me to build next, but I think that there's a lot of these micro SaaS opportunities that one person can build and earn 50K, 100K a year. And that's, quite a decent life if you're able to build that one app. But you also have a good shot of building something that makes less than that. You build something that makes 10K a year, 20K a year, and you're just.
Or you spend $300 a month in Replit credits and don't make anything. Yeah, and then lastly, this was a new segment that we started last week, was some predictions. Do we have any predictions for now? Ben actually submitted a prediction. Let's have a look at what he shared with us.
I did, yeah. So this is out of China, and look at this. So this is a robot like probably 3-4 feet tall that is playing tennis, and is able to basically maneuver around the court just like a human would. Yeah, I don't know. My prediction is just that, like, I think there's going to be some sort of, like, you remember AlphaGo, or you've heard of it, right? Where there was like an AI that was playing Go against the world's best Go player. I think there's going to be something where, like, the Djokovic of the world or something like that, there's going to be like a competition in a few years. I don't know. It might not be tennis. It might be some other, like, single person sport. But to me, like, I'm curious to know how much people actually will care about like robot sports. It's an interesting thing to think about, but I was just fascinated to see all of the moving parts that are needed to, like, have this robot be able to hit a racket so consistently. It's pretty remarkable. Obviously, kind of also depressing and scary, but kind of cool.
It's kind of crazy that we said in one episode that vision models are not on point yet, while then in the same episode we're looking at a robot playing tennis and literally hitting a ball perfectly while the ball is going 50 to 100 kilometers an hour.
Yeah,
I know.
So I mean, like this robot can change the roof, right? Like, I mean, like, how much harder can changing a roof be to play tennis, right?
Yeah. I mean, you bring up a good point. I would wager to say that, like, tasks where there's okay, so playing a sport, right? There's the ups and the downs. You could have a really good point and then a really shitty point. When it comes to work and jobs, having consistency is way more important than, like, if you're a roofer, you just need to do the roofing skill very consistently well the whole time. And I think that's just the difference between these two, right? So I don't know, but it's so interesting that we're kind of talking about both at the same time.
Yeah, like if I was a roofer, like I'd get 10 robots and do 10 roofs and just quality check them all, But yeah.
And then you can, like, then you use the flying drones to check up on it instead of the underwater.
And the underwater.
And the other underwater roofing.
Nemo claw drones or whatever. Claw.
Welding, underwater welders are some of the most high paid, like extremely high paid. It's a very, very dangerous job. So, I mean, if you can underwater welding with a robot, that'd be great. But they haven't made physical robots that do that. So I don't know if they'd make AI robots that do that.
Luca, do you have any predictions this week?
Predictions. Honestly, we mentioned it last week. I really believe Nemo Claw is going to make a dent in the adoption of OpenClaw. So when I started talking about OpenClaw on, like, my LinkedIn or just in, like, WhatsApp groups, I was getting a lot of smart asses who would be like, "Oh, it's so insecure, and you don't know what you're doing, and this is going to be so dangerous." And all I was doing is playing around with OpenClaw to figure out how I can apply it to businesses, right? I wasn't putting customer data there or my passport and my credit card details, but I was just getting ready for when it will be secure enough. And this week I'm seeing those same people are now like, I was wrong. I'm now going to start consulting companies on using Claude because it's by NVIDIA and it's secure. So, I'm not surprised because these people are maybe like they're more risk averse. But it does mean that you have a 2-month advantage over people who are adopting it now or trying to adopt it now. So yeah, I really want to get more down and dirty with as many different industries as possible to see how to apply OpenClaw.
Yeah.
Prediction is Claw is going to accelerate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Good one.
What about you, Rick? What's your
Well, for this week, I don't really have a prediction. I've been more like looking into the markets a bit more again, and I found it interesting how the AI fears that were in February kind of got overtaken by the oil fears these days. So like while in February everyone was talking about new AI announcements and AI disrupting AI equities, now the whole month it feels like the talk is about war and oil, and people just forgot about AI suddenly. And I feel like there's maybe it's the thread of AI moved into a thread of oil, and I'm wondering what's going to be next, because there's always a next fear. Are we going to go back to the fear of AI, or are people going to get scared of something else? And thinking about how oil is impacting the world and how islands in Thailand are having, or Vietnam are not having any gasoline anymore, and a liter of gasoline in the Netherlands costs 3 euros per liter now. Like stuff like that has been a bit more of my focus over the last week, and I just find it very interesting to look at markets and how there's always a fear, and I'm wondering what's going to be the next fear. I don't really want to make a prediction on what's the next fear. I'm curious how this war is going to play out and what the impact is going to be. I'm following that closely.
Did you hear about the gas discoveries in Libya?
I did not.
They just found some new gas fields in Libya, which is good news in a sense for Europe.
That's close to Malta, right?
Yeah. It's the Italian company is based out of Malta and Libya, but Malta's fuel prices are 121 because we have a hedged agreement with Azerbaijan that goes back 5-10 years now. So it's I mean most of Europe should probably start hedging their contracts too.
But then just let's double click on that. I've read some speculation as well that like countries should jump in and take some measures for this. But then on the other side are making quite a lot, like countries, for example the Netherlands, for example Belgium, they make a lot of money on the taxes on those, right, on gas. So the more expensive gas is, the more taxes they will earn. So there was speculation that they're actually not taking those measures because it fuels their tax, but like their tax, and it makes the country more profits. So it's like
They lose
mixed
political
incentives
support.
here.
Yeah, like with Malta, with the gas prices is a huge political point, right? So a government that secures the gas prices is very popular. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's going on? Like, come on. Yeah, no, but it's I really believe in North Africa and like trying to plug in Europe's energy needs. It's just been an unstable for a bit of time. But
It is. Hopefully it's over quickly and we can just go back to AI fears. Well, guys, this was another great episode. A lot of different topics touched on. We are recording today on Thursday the 19th, not on Friday, and the episode might go out a bit earlier, maybe. But yeah, so we didn't get the news of Friday. But yeah, thank you, guys. I am the greatest moderator, and you are the two best guests I could have wished for. Thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Peace out.